that is when the switchover occurred to making syrup after the Civil War. Bucket to make 2 cups of syrup. You don't have your syrup. Yeah, if you look carefully on there, there are 2 lines, 2 red lines on there. Can you see how they are labeled? Not very far boiled down. So our sink's all the way to the bottom. So we got a ways to go. You got it. I have another 2 rocks right in there. There you go. Remember not to use just any rock if you're going to try stone boiling. River rocks in particular are known to explode. Good job. So you guys were all just at the evaporator, correct?
Yes.
Okay, they've rearranged things, so I'm just double checking which station you guys are at. My name is Bill. I'm the facility naturalist and land. Generally tap. Can you tap other maples? Absolutely. Is the concentration of sugar the same? Not at all. So most of my property here is red maple, 67% sugar. That takes a lot of effort to boil down. Now, the way that we do it is we have a very small production. We tap the tree, we fill up the bags, we fill up a barrel, we dump the barrel little bit by little bit into that top container there, boil it down, and eventually we get the right concentration. Generally, we actually take it off and we boil it on in a pot over a little sterno so we have a bit more control. Once you get down to a certain point, it boils over. Tapping into that tree, right? So you would take a drill. Now this is a hand drill. Most people are going to use an electric drill. The bit that you use is about a 7/16 bit. You can use a 5/16, but I use the 7/16. You want to go in 2 to 3 inches into the tree. A bigger tree is obviously going to need maybe closer to the 3. The tree in the garden, if you see there's a bag on the tree there, that's only going to be about 2 inches into the tree. Somewhere around there. I use these iron taps, and the tap's only going to go in maybe an inch and a half in the tree. Now I'm drilling a 2 to 3 inch hole. That means I want the liquid to pool behind it. If I just jam this in there and it goes all the way into the hardwood, now there's nothing for that liquid to pool in. You want to leave it open so that the liquid can pool. And what we're actually doing is hitting into something called the sapwood. So below the bark of the tree, which is dead wood material, you go past the new growth material and you go into the sapwood, right? That's basically where we're drilling, which is a pretty hefty part of the tree. That's where all of the veins are. That's where the sugar's moving up and down. The sugar's produced in the leaves, right? But it's stored in the winter in the roots. And so that liquid is moving up and down, right? That's what the sap is. And that's what we're going for. We would tap probably about an angle. And you drill on an angle so you have a downward flow. If you drill upwards, now you really are hoping that the pressure inside is high enough to go over that tip. So you want to put it on an angle. You can use different materials. This idea with tap can get weighed down and pulled out by something this heavy to begin with once you fill it with liquid. So a lot of people won't bother with the now this tube is the kind of tube that would be used by a commercial grower. They're probably going to replace this every year. They're not going to reuse the tips, probably not even the tubes. So it's a tedious process. Like I said, all across this process, to be a commercial grower of maple syrup, it's expensive. It's a lot of money up front, a lot of money in the long run. If you don't have the land or the trees, you've got to spend years growing those trees. A full mature tree that would generally be used for producing would probably be 40 years old. Generally in this area, you can produce sometime in mid to middle of February through the beginning of March. This year, there's a very narrow window, maybe like 3 weeks in February, where I was able to collect sap. So I collected maybe a quarter of what I usually would have. December was way too cold. February was way too warm. What can you do? In Pennsylvania, maybe only about 60,000 gallons of syrup is produced each year. Still places us 5th to 6th in the country. Keep in mind, maple syrup's only produced in the Northeast and in Eastern Canada. Quebec produces the most syrup. The tree in the winter pushes all its sap down, or a lot of it down into the roots. That prevents it from freezing. If you freeze throughout your body, that liquid expands as the ice, and it can crack the tree, so a lot of the liquids goes down into the roots. A warm day out following a cold night, a lot of that sap starts to flow up. When it flows up, the pressure on the inside is a lot higher than the outside. Pressure in the winter is really low outside. It flows out. When it starts to get warm consistently during the day, now the pressure is starting to balance out. The pressure on the outside is comparable to the pressure on the inside, so the amount of flow drops. The other consequence is, you see all the flowers on the tree over here? We've reached the point, now you have trees flowering, you have trees starting to leaf out. That means the tree is now fully active. It may not be covered in leaves, but that tree is now active, which means it's going to produce tannins. All of that makes the sap bitter. So yes, you could pull sap out of a tree in the summer. In fact, if you have a machine that creates that negative pressure, sure, you can pull sap out. But now you're mixing the minerals from the roots, you're mixing the tannins produced by the tree to prevent insects from eating their leaves or insects eating them into the bark, and so it becomes bitter. Some people might like that. Generally, people don't like the bitter taste of a tree post winter. Does it hurt the tree? Sure. I will be honest with that. Anytime you cut into a tree or a plant, you are cutting through its skin, right? That bark is a protective layer to prevent bacterial infection, to prevent viruses, to protect it from fungus. The more holes you put in that tree, the greater the risk of a bacterial infection.
Sucking out all the water.
Boiling and boiling and boiling, so you evaporate the water, concentration goes into more sugar. You can go further than the 67, but that's when you start to get candy. Really, really refined, where most of the water's pulled out. I don't know what the percentage of that is. I think it's like 98% sugar compared to water at that point. That's when you get that. That's when it's hard. But you can also create like apple butter, like a spread. You can pretty much take the syrup and boil it down to something like that, where it's spreadable.
Welcome to Maple Sugar Day. I'm sure everybody has said that. My name is Mr. Dana. I'm an educator here at Churchville. I'm also the gardener. So one of the trees we have is in my garden. It's an actual sugar maple. Maple Sugar Day because most of the time, through most of its history, maple sap was made into sugar because sugar is easier to transport. And it doesn't matter whether it was the Native Americans who invented the process or the colonials who picked up. Sugar is east, and from about the border of Pennsylvania north into Canada, that's where you made maple sugar. And there's a lot of theories about how the Native Americans figured it out, whether it was woodpeckers. Instead of, well, you guys already did the evaporation. Instead of taking the stones and doing that, you could put a metal pot on a fire and step forward. And so they would do this for a long time and boil it down until they got sugar. Now in order to get sugar, you have to boil it quite a lot further. So did you get the temperature? What's the temperature when you have maple syrup? Do you remember? Then you have to stir it with a big paddle. And you have to stir it and stir it and stir it. And it was so thick and hard, you had to take turns. Keep doing that. And they had to do that in order to add air into the sludge. I wouldn't call it syrup anymore. So because of that, the people that make maple syrup weren't selling a lot of maple syrup. Sugar they sold tons of. Syrup not so much. So they had to find an outlet for that. And they found out that right about the time, I would say, of World War II, when things were very difficult in Japan, they started importing a lot of maple syrup to them so that they would have sugar, a source of sugar, and they really liked it, and they still do to this day. So a lot of our maple syrup is actually exported to Asia, either Japan or Korea or China and other places there. Not really that big in Europe because they have their own thing, but it was very popular in Asia. So that saved the maple sugar industry. What's that? You think it lasts for 3 or 4 years? Actually, maple syrup, if it's properly in a container, won't go bad.
What I said to go. Hi. It's nice to meet you all. Hello. One that we're more used to seeing from the store brands and etc. So what we're going to do is we're going to each take a pancake. We're going to put one in here, taste it. Put one in here, taste it. And then you're going to let me know which one tastes better to you. Okay? Yeah, tell me which one you thought tasted better. What do you think? B. Okay, how about you? B. A. Okay. Mom, did you do it? Okay.
Citric acid, molasses, lactic acid, monoamine.
A lot of stuff, huh? So this is going to be the...
to try to identify trees in the wintertime. That's a real challenge. Why is that? Why is it such a challenge in the wintertime? Yeah.
Because trees don't really grow in the wintertime.
They don't. They're kind of sleeping. But you put it up. So, now, here's what I mean by opposite and alternate. Okay? This is a twig that has twiglets coming off that are opposite branches. You can see. Exactly opposite from one another. This is alternate. One's here, one's there, one's here, one's there. That's alternate. Okay, now you can sit down. Thank you, sweetie. The middle, what is it? Thank you. Okay, guys.